Get out! No influencers are allowed in the cockpit lounge. The security officers shout, rattles the glass walls of the executive pre-flight suite. Dr. Nia Collins, still wearing her tailored black and gold flight director jacket, barely has time to raise an eyebrow before he clamps a hand around her forearm. He drags her past engineers and pilots who freeze mid-sentence, eyes widening as the company's chief technology officer, also the owner of nearly 38% of its shares, is marched toward the jetway like a trespasser. Phones rise. Camera flashes strobe. Someone whispers, "Isn't that the woman who built Echo Lock?" Another answers, "They say she is only a social media face." Rumor moves faster than jet fuel vapor, feeding the old belief that a black woman in a first-class uniform could not possibly belong inside the cockpit lounge unless she were a novelty guest. Overhead, the departure board flickers while staff hesitate to finalize load sequencing, unsure whether any aircraft can leave without her encrypted approval. A flight attendant trades uneasy glances with a co-pilot. Even the aroma of espresso seems to pause, waiting to learn how public humiliation tastes once it climbs to cruising altitude. Nia keeps her spine straight. Every purposeful footfall clicks against polished floor, echoing a lifetime of prejudices she has out-engineered. The counselor who laughed at her aerospace dream, the investor who urged her to add white male co-founders for optics, the director who warned that diversity would hurt shareholder value. She smiles, but the smile feels like a storm forming on the horizon. "What part of exit now do you not understand?" The guard growls at the jet bridge entrance. He scans her badge. The reader flashes red, access revoked in real time by someone higher up. The humiliation is deliberate. Show the world the brilliant black architect of the airline's autonomous cloud, reduced to nobody with a single cursor click. Passengers in plush seats witness the scene through wide windows. A teenager live streams, "The CTO is being pushed off her own plane." Across the tarmac, Flight 531's turbofan winds down, a sigh that seems to mirror Nia's exhale. Her smartwatch vibrates. A silent text from legal reads, "Board vote 6-3. Your choke point stands." Nia expected a stunt like this before the inaugural Trans-Pacific run. She also knows the airline cannot fly without the real-time license token she alone controls. She tilts her chin toward the guard. "Are you sure about this?" she asks, voice soft yet edged like titanium. "I do not make the rules," he mutters. "Neither do I," Nia replies. "I write them." With her free hand, she opens a secure app, thumb hovering over a prepared command. "Initiate Echo Lock Global Revoke." The cursor blinks, marking the seconds before aviation history changes. Nia inhales jet fumes and taps. Dr. Nia Collins steps onto the jetway as the guard releases her arm. The narrow corridor hums with recycled air and fluorescent light, a sterile contrast to the polished luxury she just left behind. Her leather shoes strike metal grating in a deliberate rhythm that steadies her pulse. Each footfall reminds her she still controls the code running beneath every wingtip on this tarmac. Ahead, a junior gate agent blocks her path, clutching a tablet like a shield. The screen shows a flashing directive: access suspended pending executive review. Nia offers a polite nod. "Please move," she says. The agent hesitates, feathers of uncertainty crossing her expression. Nia's calm, measured tone finally nudges the young woman aside. She continues toward a side stairwell that leads to the operations concourse. Inside the stairwell, Nia's smartwatch taps twice. She lifts her wrist. A live telemetry feed appears, displaying instantaneous status from each aircraft's autonomous flight core. All 187 jets still idle, engines spooling but data links silent, awaiting license validation that now hangs on her next decision. She sets the display to watchdog mode and pockets her phone. Descending to the ground level, she passes a line of baggage carts, their drivers gossiping in hushed tones. One points, murmuring, "That's her." The words float after her like smoke, but she pays them no attention. Years in aerospace have taught her that quiet corridors hide bigger echoes than crowded boardrooms. She arrives at a restricted access door marked Engineering Annex. The badge reader still glows green for her secondary credential. She swipes, enters, and locks it behind her. The humming room is filled with server racks and maintenance terminals. On a central workstation, she plugs in a secure token. The screen blinks. "Welcome, Administrator Collins." She opens a terminal window and begins a diagnostic sweep. Lines of code cascade, confirming that Echolock's global revoke has propagated to all flight decks but remains reversible at her command. She types a note to her legal chief. "Systems in hold, ready for negotiation trigger." She hesitates, rereading the sentence, then taps send. A sudden metallic clang breaks the silence. The door rattles. A pair of senior pilots stand outside, faces flushed, fists pounding. Their muffled voices seep through the steel. "We need those jets cleared. People are missing connections. Do you understand the fallout?" Nia does not answer. Instead, she removes an archival data chip from her pocket, the same chip that stores original design blueprints for every autonomous module the airline uses. She slots it into the workstation and begins an encrypted backup to an off-site vault. While the transfer bar crawls forward, she remembers the venture capitalist who once suggested her patents be held by a proxy company for optics. She refused, kept ownership in her own name, and now that foresight is the fulcrum that can lift or sink an entire carrier. A final beep confirms the backup. Nia exhales, straightens her jacket, and turns toward the door. The pounding continues. She smiles not in triumph, but in certainty. The negotiation has not started yet, but the leverage is already hers. Cockpits from Seattle to Singapore light up in perfect synchrony. The captain of Flight 218 leans forward as his primary display flickers, wipes to black, then returns with a stern white banner. Echolock license unavailable. Autonomous mode disabled. A low tone pulses every second, neither alarm nor chime, more like a metronome tapping out lost time. In the Los Angeles Tower, a controller watches 50 outbound departures stall at their gates. Her radar screen bristles with yellow hold symbols where green climb arcs should appear. She pages the airline command center, but hears only a busy signal that loops like static on an old radio. Inside that command center, analysts scramble between consoles. One engineer discovers a repeating system call sent from an address signed with Nia's encryption key. The call revokes validation tokens every 60 seconds, making any manual workaround evaporate. He knows enough to stay quiet. Anyone who tries to patch around the block now could be charged with tampering. Instead, he mutters, "She warned them." Passengers feel the ground tremor as thirsty engines spool down. A businesswoman at Gate A4 refreshes her app and sees dozens of red canceled stamps. She lifts her phone toward the tarmac and records the stillness that feels louder than any takeoff roll. The chief operating officer barges into the boardroom where directors sit glued to news feeds. Shares of the airline drop 14% in the first 10 minutes of trading, An analyst on television calls it the most expensive act of corporate bias in modern aviation history. Every mention of Echolock sounds like a hammer hitting steel. Down in the engineering annex, Nia hears the distant roar of frustration through ventilation ducts. She watches her workstation confirm each successful license null. 97% of the fleet is now grounded. She types a short status report for her legal counsel. Revocation complete. All jets safe. No code integrity risk. She pauses, adds one more line. Open to immediate dialogue with signatory authority only. She hits send. A fist slams against the annex door. Voices rise in overlapping pleas, missed weddings, organ transport flights, holiday reunions. Nia's jaw tightens, but her hands stay steady. She opens a small side panel on the rack, reveals a keyed switch, and flips it to monitoring mode. The system stops accepting further revoke commands. The lockout is now live yet stable, proving she intends safety, not sabotage. She steps back from the machine, straightens her jacket, and speaks aloud, though no one is present to hear. Ground the planes, lift the silence. The words feel like a promise both to herself and to every unseen passenger who has ever waited for justice to taxi to the runway. If you believe racial profiling has no place in the sky, comment 1 below and let the world see your stance. Across 4 continents, the ripple turns into a wave. In Atlanta, airport runways sit frozen. Planes packed with fuel and passengers remain stationary, their autonomous systems grayed out, waiting for a green light that never comes. Frustration grows not in shouts, but in silence. Gate agents whisper into radios, pilots refresh their dashboards, and passengers peer out of cabin windows at a tarmac that refuses to move. At JFK, a ground crew member steps away from a grounded 737 and opens his phone. He scrolls through breaking news. Echolock shut down grounds, entire Nova fleet. Below the headline is a blurry image, Nia being pulled by a security guard, shoulders back, expression composed. The comments section explodes. Some defend her, others attack, but all are watching. News helicopters hover over major airports. Their cameras capture what no one's ever seen, a fleet-wide standoff. From above, aircraft look like sculptures, wings still, doors shut, jetways extended but unused. One anchor calls it an unspoken strike from the top. Another says, "This isn't a glitch, it's a message." Inside Nova Fleet's headquarters, executives try to regain control. Engineers attempt workarounds but find every path locked by dual authentication routines registered under Nia's biometric ID. Legal counsel advises restraint. She hasn't sabotaged anything. Her code holds. Every safety system is intact. The CEO, red-faced, slams his fist on the table. "This is extortion." But someone else in the room whispers, "No, it's leverage." In Terminal 5, a family of 4 sits cross-legged on the floor. The mother scrolls through her feed. She shows her partner the footage of Nia's ejection. "She's the one who built the whole thing," she says. Her partner replies, "Then they're grounded because they disrespected her?" Their son looks up. "She stopped the airplanes with code?" Far from the terminals, Nia stands alone in the annex, watching data streams shift from active to suspended. The entire fleet has accepted the lockout protocol. Her posture remains calm, but her fingers tremble slightly before she folds her hands behind her back. This isn't just about power. It's about clarity. Years of being overlooked, second-guessed, dismissed, erased. Now, for the first time, no one can fly without acknowledging the work of the woman they tried to remove. She receives a message from her executive assistant. FAA requesting a briefing. Media storm growing. Echolock is trending at #1 worldwide. She closes the message and steps toward a nearby utility closet. Inside, she finds a mirror bolted to the wall. She takes one long look, not to check her appearance, but to remind herself that she is real, present, visible. Let the world wait. Let the board sweat. Her silence is calibrated, her absence from the sky, intentional. She doesn't need to shout. The silence of 200 grounded jets speaks loud enough. The chief operating officer storms into the internal strategy room, a private chamber sealed off from press and lower-level staff. Half-lit and lined with translucent screens, the space hums with quiet tension. 5 executives sit around a circular table, eyes glued to data feeds. None speak until he does. She's locked us out of our own aircraft. We need a workaround. Now. A young systems lead clears his throat. We could reach out to the vendor directly, request a backdoor patch to revalidate autonomous permissions. The COO waves for him to proceed. 2 minutes later, a secure call connects. A representative from the cloud software vendor answers with calm efficiency. This is Quadrant Forge. How can we help? The COO leans forward. We need your team to revoke access rights from one of your registered license holders. Emergency override protocol. Name is Dr. Nia Collins. There's a pause on the other end. Then the voice returns, clipped and clear. We can't do that. Why not? Because Quadrant Forge doesn't control those keys. The COO's jaw tightens. Then who does? The voice responds without hesitation. Ownership of the parent company, including all override protocols, is held by Echo Analytics Group, registered in Delaware. The listed principal is Dr. Nia Collins. The room goes still. One of the board members repeats it aloud. She owns the vendor. Not just the vendor, another whispers. The whole upstream infrastructure. For a brief moment, the storm outside quiets as the full scale of Nia's position becomes visible. The code is hers. The cloud architecture is hers. The regulatory licenses run through her systems. She doesn't just maintain the lock, she built the vault. Someone mutters, "This isn't an employee revolt. This is structural." The COO stands, moves to a side console, and pulls up the company's partnership structure. He traces it back layer by layer. Echolock isn't just a tool installed on Nova Fleet aircraft. It's part of a proprietary operating ecosystem developed under a private label. Years ago, in an attempt to cut costs and gain speed, the company offloaded the build-out to what they thought was a third-party innovator. They never looked closely at who really sat behind the curtain. In the corner of the room, an assistant rushes in holding a tablet. This just dropped. Internal documents leaked. Someone posted the original equity acquisition memo. Nia's signature is right there. The executives look up. The entire foundation of their fleet's automation is not rented from a neutral vendor. It is licensed from a woman they removed from the briefing room less than an hour ago. And now, no one is going anywhere until she says otherwise. For years, they told her to stay behind the scenes. Now, every screen in the system shows her name. The press conference begins at 1:42 p.m. local time. Journalists crowd into the media room at Nova Fleet headquarters, cameras locked in, live streams rolling, comment sections flooding in real time. The CEO steps up to the podium, gray suit sharp, tone already defensive. We are currently experiencing a systems outage affecting a portion of our fleet. Let me be clear, this was not caused by any mechanical fault or external cyber attack. It is the result of unauthorized interference by a former employee whose access has since been revoked. He doesn't name her, but the room knows who he means. Screens on the wall flash news tickers with her name anyway. Dr. Nia Collins responsible for Nova Fleet meltdown, says CEO. A few camera shutters click, others wait. Something feels off. The statement is too clean, too rehearsed. Then a soft chime breaks the quiet. Phones across the press room buzz at once. Reporters glance down, then up, expressions shifting from skeptical to stunned. On a verified account with millions of followers, a live stream begins. Nia appears on screen, standing in a plain office space lit by afternoon sun. No graphics, no logo, no pretense. Just her voice. You've now seen their version of the truth. Let me show you mine. She plays a recording grainy security footage taken just 90 minutes earlier. The cockpit lounge. The guard. The shouting. The hand on her arm. Her ID badge turning red. A second video appears. Audio from a closed-door executive meeting earlier that month. A director's voice says, "If she pushes this equity charter again, we shut her out. Let her sue." Another responds, laughing, "And who's she gonna call? HR?" Gasps ripple across the media room. The CEO freezes, one hand still on the podium. Nia continues, calm and measured. "I was not just your CTO. I was your co-architect. The very systems you rely on to fly planes, manage flight paths, and protect passengers, I designed them. I licensed them. And I maintained legal control because I knew this day might come." On the wall behind the press, journalists project real-time reactions. Social feeds explode. One post reads, "She grounded a fleet without breaking a single law." Another, "This is not sabotage. This is strategy." More voices join in. Aviation blogs, industry leaders, former employees. One retired pilot writes, "She gave us automation. We gave her silence." Back at headquarters, the CEO abandons the podium. No closing statement. No questions allowed. Nia ends her live stream with a single sentence. "I was removed from the cockpit lounge today, but not from the system. If you've ever watched someone get erased for telling the truth, now is the time to speak." Where are you flying from today? Tell us in the comments. By early evening, the corridors of Nova Fleet's legal department buzz with quiet panic. Memos circulate. Internal chats blink non-stop. Counselors gather around glass tables, their screens filled with urgent threads from board members and outside law firms. "She broke protocol," one junior associate insists. "That's grounds for immediate injunction." A senior partner doesn't even look up. "She didn't touch a single unauthorized system. She pulled her own license keys. But she disrupted flight operations. With tools she built and owns. If anything, the company violated its own IP usage terms. She's not the one in breach, we are." That word breach echoes across the room. Upstairs, in a private office overlooking the courtyard, Nia's lead counsel begins uploading a 218-page suit. The heading reads, "Breach of shareholder fiduciary duty and intellectual property misappropriation." Attached is a digital ledger showing license lineage, contribution records, and signed contracts acknowledging Nia's authority as primary architect of Echolock's cloud-based core. Within the hour, the case is filed with the Federal Circuit Court. A legal news outlet breaks the story minutes later. The headline reads, "CTO turned whistleblower sues Nova Fleet. for $200 million in equity and IP damages. Inside the boardroom, directors argue over strategy. One leans on precedent. She was removed from the cockpit lounge, not the boardroom. We can settle this quietly. Another shakes his head. There's no quietly, not after this morning, not after that live stream. The chief legal officer enters, holding a physical binder with tabs in every color. If we go to trial, we will lose. She owns the core. She controls the system. We gave her access to build it. We let her maintain it. And we never audited who owned the code repository. That's on us. A long silence follows. Meanwhile, Naya sits at a rented workspace in a private co-working loft. She has no interest in chaos. She didn't initiate a shutdown to destroy the company she's here to force accountability. For too long, power hid behind the assumption that voices like hers wouldn't be loud, wouldn't be heard, or wouldn't survive the blowback. But her strength was never in volume. It was in structure. She built the system knowing it had to stand whether or not she was standing with it. A notification pings. The court has assigned an emergency judge for the preliminary hearing. Date set. 3 days from now. She smiles. 3 days is more than enough. Across the country, aviation lawyers study the case and quietly pass it to their clients. Several CEOs stay late, asking their teams questions they've never asked before. Who owns our systems? Who writes our code? And who did we silence to get here? The strike Nia launched wasn't a hack. It was a mirror. And now, everyone has to look. Late that night, alone in her hotel room, Nia turns off every device except one. A small, battered tablet wrapped in a cloth sleeve. It's older than any system she's built. Its cracked screen lights up slowly, revealing a single saved file. A video titled Flight Day, 1992. She presses play. The footage begins with the shaky lens of a home camcorder. A young girl, no more than 7, stands on a folding chair in front of an airport terminal window. Her braids swing as she points up at the sky, where a twin-engine turboprop lifts into the clouds. "That one! That's mine!" she shouts. Behind the camera, a man laughs a deep, gentle sound. "Someday, maybe, but not today, baby girl." The camera turns for a second, catching his face. He wears a sky blue jacket with a pilot's pin, but it's not a uniform. Just something he bought himself, long ago, when he still believed he could earn one, for real. Nia's father. The recording shifts to a parking lot. The little girl is quiet now, sitting in the back seat of an old station wagon. Her father leans against the hood, flipping through papers. Rejection letters. Another one from an airline. The same words circled in red ink. Position filled. Candidate must meet cultural fit criteria. Even as a child, Nia doesn't understand what that means. But she understands her father's silence. He doesn't get angry, doesn't cry. He folds the paper carefully, stores it in the glove box, and starts the engine. The radio plays soft jazz. Nia asks, "Why don't they let you fly, Daddy?" And he answers, not bitterly, but like a man stating gravity. "They don't see me up there. Doesn't mean I'm not meant to be." Back in the hotel room, Nia closes the tablet. She hasn't watched the video in years, but tonight it feels necessary. Not because she needs strength, because she needs to remember where hers came from. Her fight didn't begin this week. It didn't begin when a guard grabbed her arm. It didn't even begin when she signed her first patent. It began in a parking lot, watching a good man absorb injustice, and keep standing. Everything she's done since then, every late-night coding echo lock, every battle to retain ownership, every time she refused to be pushed aside quietly, has been about one simple promise. They may not see us up there, but we are. She opens her laptop and adds a new clause to the Equity Flight Charter draft. It reads, "Historic Inclusion Clause, permanent seat on the Aviation Board for licensed pilots from underrepresented groups." Then she types a footnote, "For the ones who weren't allowed to take off." She saves the file and closes the screen. Tonight isn't about revenge. It's about flight, the kind that can't be grounded. The next morning, Naya wakes to a flurry of missed calls and urgent texts. Her phone buzzes non-stop. A message from her assistant appears at the top of the list. "You need to see this. Leaks hit overnight." She taps the link. An audio file begins to play. The sound is scratchy, recorded through a cockpit mic. But the voices are clear. First pilot, "You hear the CTO's grounding us?" Second pilot, "She's not a CTO anymore, just another diversity hire with a god complex." First, "Well, congratulations to her. She's turned every major airport into a parking lot." They both laugh. Then silence. The clip ends, but the damage doesn't. Nia stares at the screen. Below the post, a caption reads, "From inside the cockpit." Now you know what some of them really think. Within minutes, the audio spreads. Industry insiders repost it. Verified pilots weigh in. Some condemn the words. Others try to defend them. But the public isn't debating. They're reacting. Echo Lock Justice starts trending. The comments pile up. "She didn't ground the fleet out of ego. She grounded it because of this." This isn't about one incident. It's about decades. Now I understand why she built her own system. Even critics fall quiet. The audio isn't a surprise. That's what makes it worse. It sounds too normal, too casual. Like the system wasn't just blind. It was comfortable being blind. Back at headquarters, Nova Fleet's crisis team rushes into an emergency PR session. Their head of communications slams a printout on the table. "We are done pretending this is a one-time event. You need to address the culture. Now." The CEO glares. "We're not admitting guilt. This is a security leak." "No," she replies flatly. "This is a mirror, and everyone's looking into it." In a nearby union hall, a group of young mechanics watches the story unfold on a mounted television. One of them, a black technician in his mid-20s, speaks softly. "My cousin applied to be a flight engineer last year. They told him to cut his hair and come back in 6 months. Another nods. "I've been here 5 years. Still get asked if I'm on a visitor's pass." They don't speak with rage. They speak with recognition. Across the country, Nia sits in a quiet cafe, her laptop open but untouched. She sips coffee, lets the firestorm spread without interference. She didn't release the recording. Someone else did. Probably someone inside the system who had reached their limit. It doesn't matter who pressed publish. The truth is out now. She scrolls through a wave of DMs from engineers, pilots, dispatchers, students. Many say thank you. A few say something else. What do we do next? She leans back in her chair, eyes steady. You keep your seat. You fly anyway. By midday, the weight of every frozen departure starts pressing into real time. The flight schedule dashboard at Nova Fleet's control center turns redder by the minute. Cancelled. Cancelled. Delayed indefinitely. Routes from New York to Tokyo, from Johannesburg to Sao Paulo, now line up in rows of halted ambition. A single red banner stretches across the top of the screen. Autonomous flight authorization pending. In the financial district, Nova Fleet stock plunges further, down 42% since morning. Traders no longer ask what caused the drop. They just want to know when it stops. The company's largest institutional shareholder releases a quiet but devastating statement. We believe the issue at hand stems from a failure of leadership, not infrastructure. On the ground, the passengers grow restless. Inside airports, crowds cluster near gate counters. Tension hangs in the air like unspoken instructions. An elderly woman weeps quietly at gate B12. A man in uniform paces, his phone pressed to his ear, desperate to reach his daughter before her surgery overseas. Airline staff can offer only one sentence: "We're working to resolve the disruption." Nia watches all of it from her rented workspace. She's not celebrating. She's watching the ripple effects of an architecture she once built to make the skies safer. Now that same system has become the most powerful negotiating tool in modern aviation history. A notification pops up. Her legal team forwards an internal document from Nova Fleet. Emergency board meeting scheduled, 6:00 p.m. Eastern. Vote on charter compliance package. They're moving. Pressure works. But they're also calculating. If they vote yes, they acknowledge wrongdoing. If they vote no, they risk total collapse. Either way, the system will have to choose what kind of future it wants. One shaped by code, or one haunted by silence. Back at Nova Fleet HQ, the boardroom fills slowly. The directors speak in hushed tones. One scans a printout of the proposed equity flight charter, lips tightening at certain words. Bias audits, reparation fund, permanent seat on the Tech Ethics Committee. Another flips through a spreadsheet. Projected losses are climbing past $1.2 billion. Not because of a cyber attack, not because of a crash, but because a woman they once underestimated decided to stop pressing accept. At 5:05 p.m., Nia receives a message from her private counsel. Flight Authority has given the board 3 hours before the carrier's AOC is flagged for suspension. She breathes in. That's it. That's the clock. 3 hours. After that, the airline loses its certificate to fly. Not just a delay, not just disruption, erasure. And the decision no longer lives in silence. It lives in signatures, votes, policies, and paper trails. The planes are grounded. The world is watching. And for the first time in the airline's history, every executive knows. This time, takeoff doesn't begin on a runway. It begins in a boardroom. At 5:43 p.m., just 17 minutes before the board meeting begins, a secured line opens between Nova Fleet's headquarters and the Federal Aviation Administration. The voice on the other end belongs to an FAA director who doesn't speak in threats or headlines. His tone is even, deliberate. We're calling because we can no longer ignore the scope of this disruption. If the Echolock issue is not resolved by 6:30 p.m., we will begin proceedings to suspend Nova Fleet's active air carrier certificate. The silence in the boardroom sharpens. The CEO responds, voice tight. That's not necessary. We're handling it internally. You're not, the director replies. You're containing it. And in the meantime, thousands of travelers remain stranded, including patients scheduled for medical evacuation and emergency deliveries waiting in cargo holds. This is now a matter of public safety. The line goes quiet for a moment. Then comes the unexpected shift. There's one thing, the director says. Your CTO, Dr. Collins, already reached out to us. The board sits upright. She offered a temporary lift for all aircraft scheduled for humanitarian missions. We confirmed her authority to do so, and we've seen her activate it. At that moment, across 3 continents, a set of specific aircraft flash green. Echolock licenses for medical evacuations, supply flights, and neonatal transfers are restored. Quietly. Efficiently. Without publicity. In Nairobi, a child in need of emergency surgery boards a flight that had been grounded for hours. In Denver, an organ transport team receives notice that their plane is back online. The flight lifts into the air 27 minutes later. The FAA director continues. She's not making a point. She's making a distinction. In the corner of the boardroom, one of the directors leans forward and murmurs, "She's separating principle from cruelty." The public doesn't know this yet. There are no press releases, no announcements, just a few flight crews getting quiet green lights while the rest of the industry holds its breath. Back at her workspace, Nia watches the updates roll in. She does not tweet about it. She does not live stream her decision. This moment isn't for optics. It's for clarity. Power without control is chaos. Control without ethics is collapse. She knows exactly how far she's willing to go and exactly where she draws the line. Her assistant sends her a message. "They know you've lifted the block for med flights." Nia replies with a single sentence. "I only grounded what they refused to see." Meanwhile, the boardroom returns to motion. A vote still waits. But now, something has changed. The directors no longer see a woman acting in anger. They see a system acting with precision. And that's what makes them nervous, because outrage fades. But discipline? That rewrites the rules. 6:01 p.m. The boardroom doors close. 12 directors take their seats. The temperature in the room feels higher than usual, not because of heat, but because of what's at stake. At the head of the table sits the chairperson, papers fanned out in front of him like legal shrapnel. No one speaks until he does. This meeting will decide whether Nova Fleet adopts the Equity Flight Charter in full. A no vote risks permanent operational collapse. A yes vote concedes past error. Either choice defines us. No one nods. They already know. Across from them, seated alone with her laptop open, Nia Collins waits. She does not raise her voice. She does not repeat herself. She already sent the full document hours ago. She only speaks to clarify what happens next. "You have 28 minutes, she says, glancing once at the wall clock. At 0, Echolock expires across all fleet systems. If the charter is signed, the license resumes. If not, I archive the platform and formally dissolve support. Permanently." One director leans forward. "What happens to the code?" Nia looks at him. "It returns to its owner." "Would that include competing carriers?" She doesn't blink. "Only those willing to fly with equity." The room shifts. This is no longer about patching a system. This is about who gets to define the future of flight. The chairperson opens the charter. He reads it aloud. Section 1. Mandatory bias audits across flight operations, hiring, and promotions. Section 2. Equity Reparations Fund totaling $200 million, divided among impacted employees, contractors, and partners. Section 3. Equity Flight Oversight Committee, co-chaired by shareholder-elected directors and external ethics advisors. Section 4. Historic Inclusion Clause reserved board seat for underrepresented voices in aviation. Clause 4, one executive says, half whispering. She wrote that for her father. Another responds, she wrote it for everyone we ignored. At 6:16 p.m., a motion is called. Hands raise slowly. 7, then 9, then 10. One director hesitates. looks across the table. His hand finally lifts. 11. Only the chairperson remains. He glances at Nia. If I vote yes, this company belongs to your charter now. Nia answers without flinching. It never belonged to silence. He signs. A chime sounds from Nia's laptop. Echo lock resets. Authorization keys reissue instantly across the fleet. At Terminal 3, flight decks glow green. Engines whir. Gates come alive. Passengers cheer as captains announce clearance. But inside the boardroom, no one cheers. They know what just happened wasn't a deal. It was a reckoning. If you believe she should have stood her ground, show your support. Like this moment, share it, say it loud, because justice didn't land on its own. It had to be flown in. The first sign of change isn't loud. It's the soft whine of engines spooling up on runway 4 at JFK. Then the flicker of runway lights blooming green. One by one, grounded aircraft begin to stir, blinking back to life like a fleet waking from a long, deliberate sleep. In towers across the world, flight controllers receive the update. Echo lock license restored. Navigation core fully reauthorized. Controllers give the go-ahead. Pilots confirm. Wheels begin to roll. Inside gate A27, a grandmother who's been waiting for 12 hours hears the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been cleared for departure. She clutches the hand of her granddaughter, both wide-eyed, too surprised to speak. Nearby passengers burst into quiet applause, not knowing why things changed, only that someone somewhere made it possible. On her screen, Nia watches the telemetry light up in real time. A ribbon of green stretches from Los Angeles to London, from Cape Town to Seoul. She zooms into the dashboard showing the first aircraft to take off under the Equity Flight Charter. The label reads EFC001, Equity Flight Charter, Inaugural Route. She watches it climb. At headquarters, the signed agreement is being processed by compliance, filed into permanent record. Legal teams begin preparing public statements. But the first official action comes not from PR, not from a press secretary, but from a systems administrator deep in Nova Fleet's server vault. He runs the patch that changes the system credit screen. Every time a flight boots up, a new line now appears on the console. Flight systems powered by Collins Autonomous Architecture. Licensed under the Equity Flight Charter, August 2nd. It's the first time Nia's name is shown in the operating shell. No longer hidden in back-end metadata. No longer buried in code lines or legal attachments. It's there. Visible every time the sky is entered. At a regional hub, a pilot wipes his eyes. Not because of the delay, but because his daughter, 8 years old, science-obsessed, sits beside him watching a live stream of the Equity flight rollout. She says, "I want to be like her." He doesn't answer right away. Then he says, "So do I." Meanwhile, Nia stands in the empty hallway outside the boardroom. No fanfare, no handshakes, just her and the quiet hum of the air vents. Her assistant approaches with a document folder. "The system's back. Media requests are flooding in, and there's a crew prepping a sit-down interview if you're ready." Nia shakes her head. "Later." She reaches into the folder, removes the charter agreement, and signs her name in full ink. Not for the cameras, not for the shareholders, but for everyone who thought the door would never open. For everyone who heard "not today" and turned it into flight plans anyway. For everyone who dared to stay seated until the sky changed. The next day, headlines flood the world. She grounded a global fleet to make them listen tech. Architect forces airline industry to rewrite itself. Equity Flight Charter becomes standard for aviation ethics. Major outlets scramble to keep up. Nova Fleet's public statement confirms the adoption of the Equity Flight Charter and issues a formal acknowledgement of unjust procedural failings involving key leadership. They avoid the word apology. The public fills in the blanks. Editorials call it the most efficient, non-violent corporate shutdown in aviation history. Analysts highlight the precision of the Strike Zero code leaks, zero safety violations, and no risk to human life. Just a system paused, not broken, held in place until recognition arrived. Within 48 hours, 4 competing airlines reach out to NIA's legal office requesting talks, not lawsuits, licensing. One of them, a European carrier, sends a signed letter with a single request. May we adopt your charter in full for our international fleet? At an industry roundtable, an executive says aloud what others used to whisper. We have spent decades protecting technology from people. Maybe now it's time to protect people with technology. Behind the scenes, legal scholars begin citing the Equity Flight Charter as a model for ethical software deployment. Several tech publications feature NIA on their covers, not in profile, not in silhouette, but head-on confident, focused, fully visible. One magazine simply titles it, The System Reset. Inside Nova Fleet, change begins to take root. Employees report sudden shifts in tone. A senior engineer speaks out in a company town hall. For years, I didn't believe the code would ever carry our names. But last night, I saw hers light up the dashboard. That's the future I want to work in. Some resistance remains. A few executives grumble behind closed doors, but their voices are quieter now, and no one rushes to support them. In classrooms, engineering students study the structure of the shutdown, tracing the layers of control and resilience NIA embedded into her architecture. They don't call it a hack. They call it a lesson. A reminder that access is not power unless it can say no. In a quiet email inbox, NIA receives a message from an address she doesn't recognize. No subject line, just a sentence. My father applied to be a pilot in 1981. They turned him away too. He never got to fly. But last night, he stood up when your name appeared on the screen. Said it was the first time he'd seen someone like him own the sky. She closes the message and saves it to a folder labeled Legacy. Not marketing, not strategy, just proof that something landed where it never had permission before, and that it doesn't need permission now. 2 weeks later, a single jet waits on a private tarmac in San Diego. Its fuselage gleams in soft morning light. Across the tail, bold lettering reads EFC 0001, the official call sign of the inaugural Equity Flight Charter route. The aircraft isn't commercial today. It's been reserved for something different. Naya steps out of a transport vehicle and looks up at the jet. A small group stands nearby, students, mentors, educators. All of them are under 20. All of them are Black. All of them come from schools that rarely receive invitations like this. She walks over, extending her hand to each of them, not with the tone of a sponsor, but with the presence of someone welcoming teammates. No cameras follow, no press, just documentation for the students to keep. Something they can carry into their futures. Inside the aircraft, the cockpit has been cleared for demonstration. Every student takes a turn sitting in the pilot's seat. They touch the yoke. They study the displays. One of them whispers, "This is the first time I've seen a flight system that doesn't feel like it was built without me." Nia stands beside them, arms folded gently, watching. She remembers the first time she touched a control panel. It was in a flight simulator built from spare parts and donated cables. Back then, the glass was cracked and the code was unstable. But even through the errors, she felt the possibility of command. Now, she offers that feeling without obstacles. Later, she moves to the back of the cabin and speaks softly to the group. Most systems are designed to keep things in place, but you're here because someone in you was never willing to stay still. The students nod. Some smile. Others just sit quietly, taking it in. One girl raises her hand. Did you always know you'd do this? Naya pauses. No, but I always knew what I couldn't let stand. After the flight, a small ceremony is held at the hangar. Nothing elaborate. Just a plaque mounted near the entryway, Equity Flight 001, in honor of those who were told they couldn't fly and those who flew anyway. Dedicated by Dr. Nia Collins. August 12th. Before leaving, she walks alone back onto the plane. She places her hand on the interior panel beside the cockpit door, where a new seal has been engraved. Built by hands they tried to keep grounded. She doesn't stay long. There's more work to do. But for this one moment, she allows herself to be still in the cabin she helped reimagine not as a machine, but as a message. A door that opens. A seat that waits. A sky that no longer belongs to only a few. Today, she doesn't have to fight to be seen. She just has to fly. The camera fades in on a quiet hangar at dusk. There are no engines humming now. No pilots rushing through checklists. Just soft orange light spilling across the polished floor and a single aircraft sitting in stillness. Its tail number, EFC 001, reflects the last golden sliver of sunlight. A narrator's voice comes in slowly. Calm. Steady. Most revolutions don't begin with noise. They begin with refusal. Images fade in, Nia's badge turning red. Cockpits frozen in silence. The moment she taps the Echo Lock command. Then a cut to passengers cheering as lights blink green again. When Dr. Nia Collins was forced out of the room she helped build, she didn't protest. She didn't shout. She didn't fight with force. She did something else. Quick flashes, the charter document being signed, the dashboard flashing license reinstated. A girl touching the pilot controls on Equity Flight 001. She used the system they overlooked. She made silence visible. She didn't ask to be heard. She made herself impossible to ignore. On screen, one final quote appears in clean white type. You don't have to break the sky to change who flies through it. NC. The music swells, no lyrics, just strings and low brass. Slow, strong, grounded. We see news headlines one last time. Airlines adopt ethics charter. Nia Collins, named Most Influential Technologist of the Year. Equity Flight model spreads across aerospace sector. Cut to a black screen with white letters. Where power once hid in code, now visibility takes its seat. Back to the narrator. Change isn't always loud. Sometimes it waits. Until the moment it's needed. And then, without warning, it writes itself into history. A final series of faces appear brief clips of young students, ground staff, engineers, and passengers watching planes take off, their expressions full of something new. Recognition. One last frame. Nia walking up the stairs into a cockpit at dawn. No spotlight, no cameras, just her silhouette, framed by the open sky beyond the windshield. She sits, hands on controls, eyes forward. The screen fades to black. Text appears. Do you believe the skies should belong to everyone? Then don't just watch, subscribe, speak, subscribe, stay. Next episode, Black Surgeon, grounded in the OR. 12 minutes later, he owns the hospital's AI system. Soft chime. End card screen. Equity series, True Fiction. Inspired by power, bias, and resistance. Subscribe button pulses gently. Bell icon stays silent, waiting for those who want more. Because this isn't just a story, it's a signal, and it's still transmitting.